Nick, we've done a lot of recording this weekend.
We have, yes.
What else have you done?
We have recorded... What did we... We recorded 2 episodes of Until Dawn. We recorded the pre-E3 video.
Pre-3.
And now we're recording this.
Why will you be joining us for the Nintendo review again? Or does it all just come down to whether or not you're going to watch it?
I don't know. Last time I joined, all I saw was a hella long Smash Brothers video.
That is true.
Hans and I were wondering what they could spend half the video talking about this time.
Yeah, and my guess was really good until they went and fucked me over.
Hans, they never do Pokemon during Nintendo Directs. It's always its own thing because Pokemon needs to have the spotlight. So I pose a question for preamble, and I would like your advice.
Mm-hmm.
Should I buy a VR headset?
No. Okay, next question.
Why not?
You don't have enough... what one are you thinking?
So I'm torn between the Oculus Quest. Between the Oculus Quest, which is like the all-in-one headset, which doesn't need a PC, or the Oculus S, I believe it's called, which is the one that doesn't have like the sensors. It has all the cameras actually on the headset itself.
And how much will these cost you?
The Quest, I believe, is $200.
Oh, it's not that bad.
And the S is $350.
These have come down significantly
They
in
have,
price
Yeah, they're a lot cheaper.
since we last thought about buying one. Like, I think when we looked, you're talking about £400 to £500.
Yeah.
But are people really still making VR games?
Yeah.
Like people. It's not necessarily people are making VR games. People are now a lot more. It's now a lot easier to put VR into existing games. Which, whether or not half the time that makes it better, who knows? But
You saying you don't want to play Skyrim VR or Fallout 4 VR, Nick?
Hans, Fallout 76 VR.
Yeah, we could go back to that wonderful game.
I'd rather shoot myself.
That got brought up while Hans and I were doing the pre-E3 thing, and
Hey, we still all own that.
unfortunately, yes.
So we could feasibly go back to it. We could do a No Man's Sky situation.
We could also pour bleach into our eyeballs, because that would be just as much fun as playing Fallout 76.
Probably more fun.
I agree.
Well, yeah.
Especially if I went last. Brothers and sisters, welcome to the Not So Super Bash Bros presents Game Club for May 2019. Yes, we are back. Game Club, the monthly video podcast review thing, where we take turns picking games, go play them for the month, and come back and discuss them for your listening pleasure. This month, I picked Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice by Ninja Theory, and as ever, I am the god of hosting and bad haircuts, Nick Davis. Joined. I've done
I believe in you, Nick. You
too
can
many
power through
videos in the
this.
past week. Joined by the god of celibacy and self-deprecation, Hans Davis.
You really struggled with that.
Yeah. It's been a long day. The god of picking and liking bad games, Alex Proudfoot.
To be fair, right, I didn't like some of the other bad games either.
And the god of taking photos of food and racial abuse, IY Chung.
Too true.
Does that mean he's the god of giving racial abuse or
Open
receiving?
to interpretation, Alex.
Alright, okay. Just wanted to clarify.
Maybe he just hates them whiteys.
Much like most religion, it's open to interpretation.
So how is everyone?
I am feeling productive, Nick. What about yourself?
It's been a long couple of days. I've recorded a lot.
Is your throat sore yet?
Always.
It will be.
Alex, how?
I made sure to make sure your joke was relevant. So we're recording late because I was actually taking photos of food.
God damn it, Iowa. Stop being a millennial.
Well, I was contradicting you, and I've been playing a lot of Bioshock Infinite.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I was meaning to talk to you about that. I hate you, Alex.
Why?
Because that was on my short list of games to pick.
Is it bad that it was also on my short list of games to pick?
I was kind of like, I can't pick it now because it'll bore the pants off if I'm having to play it immediately again. It's a very good game.
I'm just working my way through my backlog of games that I have.
Hope you're playing it in 1999 mode.
I don't know what that is.
it's like the hardest difficulty.
Is there not a mode as well that makes it black and white, or am I thinking of something completely
I
different?
think the DLC does, like the noir style DLC they put out.
Yeah. I remember now.
Yes, Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, the psychological action adventure game, originally released in August 2017 on the PS4 and PC, and later released in 2018 and 2019 on the Xbox One and Switch, respectively. What is Hellblade, I hear you ask?
What is Hellblade, Nick?
Hellblade, you play as Senua, who travels to Helheim to save her deceased partner from Hela and rescue his soul in an attempt to bring him back to life. During her journey, Senua has to journey through the realms of the dead while also dealing with voices in her head, the furies, and hallucinations of her past. Yep. I have broken this down into 3 categories.
Wait, are you not getting ahead of yourself here?
Why?
You do not usually ask us how far we get before you go into 3 categories? No?
Do you also not usually ask why?
Yeah.
It'd be weird if I asked myself that.
Oh, that's consistency.
Nick, why did you pick Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice?
I picked Hellblade for a number of reasons. When it came out originally, I thought it looked very interesting. I thought it looked very good, and there was a lot of talk in the lead up to it of like the way everything was kind of motion captured and like really good facial recognition capturing, and a lot of that stuff looks really cool. And Ninja Theory as a developer, I've always kind of liked. I've really liked the whatchamacallit games, the Devil May Cry game they did, and they did a couple other games like Enslaved and what's the PS3 release game they did?
Ah, yes, that great game shit.
They did a PS3 release game as well, which was very good. And yeah, overall, like Ninja Theory have also just been bought by Microsoft, so that's obviously interesting, and they're kind of in the news about what they'll kind of do with more backing behind them. But yes, 3 categories. Story and presentation.
What are those 3 categories, Nick?
God damn it, Hans. Why'd you interrupt me?
Sorry.
I hate you so much.
I was actually trying to be serious that time because I was like, oh shit, a long silence, I'll ask. And then you started to say it as I asked.
Story and presentation. Gameplay.
Ooh.
Permadeath and lying.
Right.
But before we kick into it, how far did everyone get in Hellblade? Personally, I think I got about 2/3 of the way through the game, from chatting to Iowa and Alex about it. I plan on finishing it though. It's just other things got in the way between working and the shit. Hans?
I think roughly I got just under halfway.
Alex?
I finished it.
Iowa?
I also finished it.
Sweet. Good on you. Well done. Proud of you.
But to say that, I did watch, as we always call it, the movie, which is all the cutscenes, because I was interested in the story, so I know what happens. Nick, you do realize we're going to have to talk about spoilers, yeah?
Yeah. No, I've also read what happens, just to
I'm
aware. So yes, first section, story and presentation. Personally, I think this is a very good story. I think it's very well told. I think it's a very interesting story. I think Senua is a really good protagonist as well, and I think as part of it, her motion capture and just general acting in general and the way she's presented is incredibly well done, and like some of the best facial capture I think I've seen in a video game in a long time. And I also think that all the kind of voice acting the game does is very, very well done.
Did you ever... I assume since you didn't finish it, you didn't actually watch like the...
No, I did not get around to watching that feature, but I did. I'm assuming that feature is probably built up of a lot of stuff that was put out pre-release. Like they did like a whole documentary series leading up to the release of it, and I remember watching that leading up to the release. So I imagine a lot of that might probably cross over. I'm assuming it's a lot of it's about like how they made it and like her in like mocap suits and stuff.
Yeah, because since you're talking about her, I was just going to mention that like originally the person for it was actually just like a placeholder person. It was just like, oh yeah, you can just fill in for now. But then apparently it's like, oh wait, she's great. We'll just use her.
Yeah, it was like a video editor. It was a stand-in one day, and then they just kept her.
Yeah.
Pretty good. For someone who's not technically an actress, that's pretty good then.
Yeah.
Because I think she is very, like, I think that is a very well done character. Like, I think even just, like, the voice, like, the facial acting and, like, some of the real close-ups of her are very, very good. And I think it's funny because obviously there are some actual, like, live action stuff in the game. And, like, there's not much of a difference in some of the close-ups of her. Like, if you squinted, you would not be able to tell the difference between her and one of the live action scenes.
I think the way it's shot does lend itself to, one, making it look really good, and two, kind of being able to appreciate how good it is, with the fact that there's never really more in any of the cutscenes there's never really more than Senua on the screen because you are technically the other person looking at her from the point of view. Just the way it's similar to, you know, the way Far Cry 5 does a lot of that, like, I'm gonna get really close to you so you can see my facial animations. It's similar to that because of the way it's shot. It's really, really, really interesting, and you can appreciate just how pretty and it does look.
I guess because we are talking about like the graphics, I guess. I played it on the Switch.
Oh yes, I forgot. Yeah, you did play it. How was that? Because obviously it is a very pretty game. Like, it's very high fidelity graphics.
Yeah, so I also watched like comparison videos before I did it because I wanted to make sure I wasn't just going to buy like, something really bad. And from my just experience with it, I think it looks really nice whenever it is, you know, docked. I think it is not very nice whenever you have it in handheld. Because
generally Switch games are the other way around, I'd say, because usually it doesn't up-res it when it's usually running on a slightly lower resolution, so it can run a bit better. So
I think just because because the screen was right in front of my face, I could see just a lot more, like, just how more blocky, I guess it is. And I didn't notice any frame rate drops, from what I can tell. Especially since I'm still playing Breath of the Wild, and it has that massive drop in the forest.
Yeah.
Where the sword is. Like, in comparison, Senua runs like a dream, right? So it does. But I had no issues with that. But I guess, to sort of segue into like another presentation bit, I imagine I did not get the full effect by not having headphones, is the problem.
Yes. Yeah. So I was going to bring that up in the next bit. The Furies obviously are kind of the voices Senua hears in her heads because of her psychosis. And I do think they are like the best bit of the game. But I can see why they would not be good if you aren't wearing headphones. Because so much of the effect is it like shifting from like left to right and kind of feeling like you're surrounded the entire time.
Oh.
And
it's not only that, there's a lot of stuff that you miss. Because when I was talking to Ibai about it, like, I kept on mentioning different whispers I was hearing. And of course, yeah, you don't hear it if you don't have headphones.
They're probably a lot harder to hear, yeah. Unless you have your TV absolutely blaring.
Because, like, one of the big ones was at the end. In the final, like, fighting. Once you get knocked down, the voices just say, let it go. As if to say, stop fighting. That was very clear to me, but I think Guy was saying you didn't hear it.
Nah, man, I was just in a fit of rage. I had to keep swinging. Right? Not listen to any voices, right? We're past that at that point in the game. We're just going.
No. Voices are always there. But, like, shouting out stuff's behind you, giving you hints,
Yeah, I think that was a really kind of clever way to kind of not entirely hold your hand, or how to hold your hand very organically. Like, I suppose it's a bit more towards the combat and gameplay side a wee bit, but, like, the fact that they would be like, oh, don't let them surround you, aka enemy spawn behind you, or dodge now, okay, they're attacking. It's a really
sometimes
clever
it's just
way.
straight up, he's behind you.
Yeah.
Like, but then again, in some places, they are there and distracting you.
Like, some of the times they are, like, they're purposely kind of saying misleading things, like,
in
in the middle of a puzzle, if you're going towards something, like, they'll start saying, oh no, you're going the wrong way. But, like, I think that all adds to kind of the whole, like, psychosis, mental illness side of it,
thing, yeah. I think it's clever, though, because they don't do it during the combat bits, which is obviously the more challenging bits. With the puzzle thing, there's less of a pressure on you, so you can kind of be like, oh, right, well, yeah, fuck you guys. It'd be a real dick move on the developer side if they were like, oh, no, there's nothing happening behind you, don't worry about this massive sword coming towards your head.
So what did you guys think of the story overall, like, regardless of the characters, the actual, like, the plot itself?
That was awesome.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's really clever on a lot of layers. For example, they think she's cursed, but then realistically it's just mental illness, and that's because it's set in Viking times and they didn't know what mental illness was and that sort of thing. And but then they also play with reality because, maybe she genuinely is cursed because of other things.
Because she has this sick black goop going up her arm.
Well, that only happens whenever she goes to that place, to, or enters the land of dead, if you will. That she doesn't have that at the very, very beginning. So yeah, I whenever we maybe get a bit further on, I want to talk about the ending a bit, but
I want to talk about the ending of it now, actually, just because it was to do with the story. But
okay.
Should I mention it now, or do?
Oh yeah, go for it.
So for me, like, the reason why I think the story is great, because obviously at the start it kind of comes off as just a, like, oh, I must save my loved one, right? Like, that's how it comes off at the start. But then, you know, obviously it's a lot deeper, and, like, that whole quest and that motivation is, like, challenged a lot. And there's a moment, like, halfway, 3/4 in, where, like, to get to the thing, right, is that she carries, like, the skull with her, and there's a moment in the game where she loses it and drops it, and, like, that puts her in a bit of a bad state. So I think, like, that as, like, her motivation is actually quite, like, it's done really nicely. But at the end of the game, what makes the game really good is that if this was any other game, the ending would be she reses her loved one, the voices go away, and you know, we pull a Kratos and start killing gods, right? that is how, like, most other games would end. But in this game, how it ends is she accepts that she can't bring someone back to life, and Hell is very much still alive. Although this is, like, all in her head as well, right? Like, this is and then, but the big part for me is the voices, and this reflects a lot more on how much sort of respect they have for the whole mental illness thing, where at the end of the game, she's kind of come to terms with it, but it does not go away.
She's learned how to live with it, sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah, that this is a part of her, but that it doesn't just vanish magically, right? Because we're at the end of the game. And I think for that, like, I have a lot of respect for this game.
I got a lot more respect when I watched that featurette, because they showed that they actually came up with the different puzzles from the feedback of, like, people who saw the different hallucinations and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How they saw the world. Like, some people said it was like they saw different things in the world and believed that they were part of a bigger puzzle. So that's why they put the doors in with the
like, that's how
rooms.
They decide. Yeah, that's kind of like how they work that puzzle. Yeah,
I thought that, like, how they incorporated all of that stuff into the game is just astounding.
Yeah. The amount of pre-production that must have
the
happened
research
before they started this.
Effort they put in to portray that is just incredible.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, like, and if kind of really any form of media I feel I've seen recently, like, it's definitely one of the ones that's taken mental illness and stuff like this, like, the most serious, and treated it with, like, a lot of respect. And the fact, calling it an illness is probably even saying, like, probably bad. Like, this isn't an illness to be cured. It's something that people cope with and deal with and, like, live with their life with.
Talking about something IY said, and I'm not sure if it's open to interpretation, or maybe I didn't see it clearly, but IY said about if this was God of War, you'd just be killing gods and stuff. I think she does kill Hela, because the weird bit is...
Well, I don't think she does.
But Hela is definitely on the ground. Whenever it's panning back from the tower, and all the kind of, like, all the facade, if you will, of, like, the top of the, you know, the where you do the final battle with Giant Hela. That is her on the ground. Like, they've swapped places. Like, it's now Senua is up and walking about, whereas Hela is on the ground dead, or apparently dead. Because I wasn't sure. I thought that was her, like, an old her or something. But I went and read kind of synopsis to make sure, and no, that's definitely Hela on the floor.
Okay.
So this is one of the weird things I wanted to talk about. Like, with this sort of game, it can 100% be kind of open to interpretation, a certain amount. So, do you think she killed... To me, I almost think what's happened is she's actually killed Hela and taken over as the goddess of death. That's just what I think. But I kind of want to
feel like that doesn't really fit the narrative, though.
Well, from what I understand, she's just a Celt on, like,
her rehabilitation journey.
Yeah. She's, like, on a vision quest or something. She's, like, just an ordinary girl who happened to go through these, like, mental disorders and all that kind of stuff. And she's, like, just seeking salvation in a way with, like, Dylan. So to say that she's become the god of death is a bit much, maybe.
But then I don't understand why Hela is dead. That's the bit that throws me, you know.
Maybe that's not even there.
But I also feel like maybe there is something later on. But the bits I've played feel like there is nothing to indicate that this is also just something that's all happening in her head.
This is the thing. So this is the thing. Like, because it does kind of play with partially. Yes, there could
Like-
just be happening in her head, but she's still or is she still fighting people? You know.
Yeah.
Because to me, like it seems to be a blend of the two. In my opinion,
Yeah.
it seems to be there is 100% supernatural elements. And I think that's why this works so well, is because you're not supposed to be able to tell what's in her head and what's actually happening.
Yeah.
It's weird to me though, because
But like
I don't know, like it was just the Hella thing got
in
me.
her reality, she may have killed a god.
I was thinking that as well, but then I was almost kind of thinking if she was still in Hella's tower, if you will,
Yeah.
you know, I would kind of get it. But the fact that it's back to normal, you know, it's just back to what she seems is reality, which is it's just an old wooden tower, then that to me would kind of be like, all right, so this kind of just she's finished, it's all clear and stuff. I don't know, to me, like, don't get me wrong, it's a little nitpick that I have that I don't quite get the ending. As I say in wrestling terms, it's a dirty finish. It's not very clear. Just actually on endings, so you know the way as you go towards Hella's Tower and you hit the door and all the glyphs from the audio logs pop in around.
Yes.
Do we know if there's actually an extra ending if you get all the audio? Is there?
It's not an extra ending.
Mm-hmm.
If you get all the lore stones, Druth comes up
What is it?
and tells you he's been lying to you the entire time, basically.
About what? His history, or
His history, yeah.
what is his actual history?
I can't remember exactly, but it like goes into detail of how the Vikings came and like slaughtered everyone and all that. I think
And
it was
that
like
that he wasn't the slave or something?
yeah,
Or
Like-
he kind of goes into how he was like killed and shit.
yeah.
Or how he like
Well,
essentially.
it's like he comes in and is basically like, yeah, everything I've told you about myself, yeah, that's not true.
Weird that she only remembers that when she remembers, like, when she remembers all the audio logs.
But the lore stones are genius. I love the lore stones.
Why? Can I ask?
Why? Because I love the mythology. I love the
I agree. Like I love like Norse mythology and all that, but I also feel like a lot of the lore stones were entirely like unrelated to what was actually going on. A couple of times, yes, they are, but I feel like a lot of times I'm listening to it like this is just some cool Norse story, not actually related to what I'm currently
they're
doing.
optional stuff, aren't
They
they?
are optional, but like there's a difference between optional and unnecessary.
Well, like the whole Norse mythology is kind of relevant because it builds up. It tells you like the backstory now. Towards all the lore stones at the end are like talking about Ragnarok.
Yeah, well, I get like there
So-
are some like he talks about the sword as well, like that's in the tree, and
Yeah.
then like he goes in the backstory of that. But there's a point where it's like he's sitting there talking about Ymir and all that, and you're like, this has nothing to do with what I'm currently doing. It's not like it's not a massive knock. It's just like there were times where I was sitting listening, and I was like, do I actually need to be like sitting listening to this, and could I not just get on with this?
My only gripe with lore stones is if you move too far away.
Yeah, they feel out. Yeah,
Yeah. That was my only issue with them. But
I kind of get that though in a game where audio is so
Yeah.
important that
Yeah.
you don't kind of want one audio like stopping
Playing over
another
the other.
potential cue taking over. It's
Well,
yeah, it's
I
a
like
it's a
the
weird
lore
balance
stones.
to try and find there.
yeah, I missed one.
I got missed a few by the time I had kind of until
I missed one
until where I
in
got up to.
one of the sword trials because you can't go back to it.
I was only like it was only actually probably recently they actually noticed it was filling in like the stuff around it as you actually find them.
Okay, so while you guys have been discussing, I've googled the fuck out of this ending
Right? Okay.
to sort of see what like I've looked at like different sources, right, to sort of see like what like a consensus might be, and it is just simply that Hela is the darkness, right?
Yeah.
And it is this sort of like physical manifestation of what she is trying to overcome, and it is only whenever she gives up, as the end of the game where she gets stabbed,
Yeah.
that she accepts essentially her own illness, essentially, right? So it is something that has been created in her mind, but it is
Yeah.
something that Hans is correct that she does defeat. And that is why why Hela becomes her, because they are one and the same, because they are created by this person.
But the thing where, so what, Hela, when you say Hela became her, you mean in from a completely visual sense, as we are watching it, Hela became Senua. Not that Hela literally became Senua.
Correct.
Right.
Because that was the bit that got me whenever I watched the ending, was whenever Hela has the skull.
Killed her and
it has the skull and then suddenly transforms into Senua, and I was like, wait,
into Senua.
what?
Yes.
Okay. But it turns out that, like, yeah, she has
Senua has essentially killed the weak part of herself that couldn't deal with the darkness, and this new Senua can.
It's not even that. It's not even that she is like defeat. It's that she's accepted it.
Yeah.
Which is the
it's
more
no
important.
longer this thing that is battling against her.
A remnant of it.
Do they ever actually show that Hela being killed?
No, she's just dead on the ground whenever.
But is she dead? Because I'm just thinking
she's just napping.
They make a very big point of her killing the two demigods at the start and her purposely like murdering them. That why would they not also make a big deal out of this?
Because this is not an actual demigod. This is just apparently the personification of her darkness.
But I don't know. What I read, it all seems to make a fair amount of sense. But granted, I haven't seen it. Actually, I've just read a summary.
Should we move on to gameplay?
Yeah. So, gameplay. So for those who don't know, Hellblade is kind of just it's a third-person game. It's always constantly kind of behind the back, and kind of mixes up its gameplay between some environmental puzzle solving and combat. So I really like the puzzles. I don't think any of them are particularly like taxing, and I'm never sitting there fucking scratching my head constantly. But I think the mechanics are constantly tweaked in a really smart way as you go from area to area, that it does keep you thinking about them. The flip side of that, and I think this is where it's really funny that I've picked this after Gree, where I feel like Gree, in a lot of aspects, was straight down the middle, completely unremarkable in a lot of ways, around a lot of its gameplay, where I feel like Hellblade shines in so many fucking areas, but one area really lets it down, and I think that area is the combat. I think the combat is very rough at times, and if it happened more often in the game, I'd probably think it's a lot more of an issue, but the combat is sparse enough that it's not that bad. But every time I did get to a combat section, I was like,
Nick,
oh god.
You haven't finished it, have you?
True, I haven't. So maybe there is more combat.
There's a lot more combat.
But like, every time combat started, I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, again. Like, it's not an enjoyable section of the game, I don't think.
The combat, I thought, was fine, because it's simple. It's like, you've got a parry, you've got a dodge, and you've got like the 2 attacks.
Hey, 3. So 3. You can kick them.
Oh, yeah. So it's not like it's, super complex, you have to time stuff. Now you can... See, and you can focus as well, so you can slow everything down and make the fights a hell of a lot easier.
I get that it's probably just differing opinions on like things, but you call it simple, I call it repetitive and boring. It's not engaged. For me, anyway, it was not engaging, that combat. It was just a chore.
I'm with Nick on this one, actually, to be honest. That was kind of what turned me off the game.
Really?
The first time it happened, I was kind of like, oh, okay, this is kind of the basic layers and foundations of it. Great. And then it just kept happening, and it added very little to the equation. Sometimes there's in the enemy type, okay, they have a shield, okay, they attack differently, but to the actual, what I can do to bring the combat, other than slow down time, I didn't see much changing. And it's weird, because the combat is actually very similar to God of War, from perspective and to kind of what you do, but God of War pulls it off a lot better, in my opinion. The new God of War, not the old God of War, let's just clarify that.
Well, I just find it effective. It is what it is.
The only real time I actually enjoyed the combat would have been the boss fights, actually. Kind of thinking about it now. Because they were so completely different.
But even, the 2, maybe 3 boss fights I think I've done so far, they were all... It's because everything they've not made the combat challenging by any aspect, like, because every attack is so choreographed that nailing a parry is not difficult, and it just makes it feel like...
Let me tell you, Nick. If you were to play further, the combat gets a bit more challenging.
But it only gets challenging because they threw more enemies at you on screen at once.
That is the problem I've already started seeing, is they're not getting... At this point, they've introduced probably, the 3 enemy archetypes, and they're not changing it up, they're just throwing more at me.
You get the normal dude, the shield dude, the berserker.
The club guy. Sorry, there's also the guy with the big axe.
Yeah. I think
that I've seen one of.
I think there's 5 or 6 enemy types in there.
I don't think there's that many.
I've seen 4.
I don't. Is there even 4?
There is sword guy, there's club guy,
4, yeah.
there is shield guy, and there is big axe guy.
I feel
there's 2 big guys.
Is sword and club guy not kind of the same dude?
Kinda. I think the club guy is hard. Well, I think he just has kind of different attack patterns, but you don't really deal with him the exact same way. Like, you don't need to break his guard or anything. You just need to parry him.
So what I would say with the combat is it is repetitive. The pacing of it in terms of where it is in the story makes sense, right? Because what ends up happening is, you know the bit you were on, Nick, where you have to get the sword?
You lose your sword, yes.
Right. So there's no combat, right?
Yes.
Throughout the entirety of it.
I haven't faced an enemy in like an hour.
Right? Which makes complete sense from a narrative point. Mm-hmm. And then after that bit, there's a shitload of combat, right? Which also narratively makes sense. So I feel like in terms of where it puts it, it is quite inconsistent, but it makes sense from a story.
Yeah, you say it narratively makes sense, but is it fun to play? Like, because it feels like now that I've had this massive gap of combat, the next bit of combat I've hit is just going to feel even worse. Because 1, I haven't done it in a while, and 2, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this really good puzzle solving that I really like doing, and this whole last hour, 90 minutes of the game has been so focused on storytelling and these puzzles that I'm now going to suddenly hit this bit of the game where I'm barreling through it because I just want to get past this shit combat to see the rest of this amazing game.
I actually think the combat straight after that break is actually really good because there was a huge break. So I would take the other perspective of that.
Yeah.
In my opinion. But I think you are right about the actual gameplay of it. In a lot of ways, though, what I kind of love about the combat is literally because they were able to implement the voices in the combat.
Yes.
Right? So it gave the whole condition of your character a reason, like a purpose within a gameplay setting. And I think for that, it's really nice. And in a lot of ways, you know, I guess I'm going to call it like, just because it has a counter in the game, well, not a counter, but like a parry thing, I guess, like I'm just going to say Batman-like, but we're in a way that like, instead of just like, you know, flashing lines above my head, because I'm hearing voices, that made it so much more engaging. The actual hitting of guys is really crap, but whenever like you are reacting, not because of a visual UI element, but because of you're going insane, like that for me makes it like there is an element to the combat which is really good. It's a shame it's not the playing bit, right?
Yeah. So I'll say probably the only thing that got me through the combat and probably pushing through to play more of this game is the fact that I turned it to easy, because obviously then that gives everyone less health, and I'd say 1 parry and probably 1 full combo, like I'd say XXXY or something like that, would take down those normal guys at least.
I actually googled a combo list because I accidentally did something like kind of cool, and I was like, wait a second, is there more to this combat than I thought? And there's like maybe like 5 or 6 like combos you can do.
There's like a couple of things that like if you do a dash and an attack, you'll do like a jab and something with extra reach, but like there's not enough there, and you don't need to use all of it or any of it pretty much.
No, you just need to parry and mash.
Yeah, like it's a shame for like the rest of the game being so fucking phenomenal, I think, that this bit of it really, really lets it down, especially coming from a developer like Ninja Theory that has a history of making real fucking good combat games. It feels like something went drastically wrong here, and I don't know what it was. And I get that that's probably, like, as someone who, like, I play, like, religiously games like the FromSoft games, it's probably something that strikes me a lot harder when games have kind of poor, especially melee combat. But it's just, it hit me particularly hard on this because the rest of the game is such a highlight. I'm
going to stand by the combat being simple but effective.
I think it just kind of, to me, it looks like they've added the combat because they maybe didn't feel they didn't feel like the puzzle solving was enough. Like, you know, obviously the story's fantastic, and they were maybe just kind of thought, oh, we don't want this to just be a walking simulator. We actually want there to be some more meat to it.
It's funny you mentioned Bioshock Infinite earlier, because I remember when I was playing this, I was thinking, Ken Levine, guy who made or the creative designer behind Bioshock Infinite, said in an interview, like, this wouldn't be a shooter if this wasn't a AAA game. Like, if he was making this as a small indie game, he would just have it be, like, a narrative experience in the world of Columbia. And part of me thinks the same thing has kind of happened here, where while they would love this to just be a plain narrative experience that is probably just the puzzle solving aspect of it, that because they wanted to try and market this, they needed something to put into it, and the combat was probably the easiest thing.
Yeah, no, I can kind of see that. I think, because this technically isn't really a AAA game,
Yeah,
is
like,
it?
I was tempted, instead of the final section, I was tempted to kind of talk about how B games like this, for lack of a better term, are kind of coming back in a big way recently.
And I think that's it. It's like, you know, the fact that Bioshock's gunplay was so very good was probably because they had the money to try and invest into that sort of thing. Because it was a AAA game, and maybe this is just kind of what they could do with the money they had. You know, they couldn't put into the same levels as, say, a God of War combat or something like that.
But it's weird you mentioned God of War, because this kind of feels like a sort of precursor to it in a lot of ways.
Like, this is what they had, the basic meat and potatoes, and then God of War took it a
Yeah,
step
like,
further.
it does feel very similar to that God of War PS4 game that came out.
No, I agree.
Anything else on gameplay? Oh, there's probably not a lot to discuss in the gameplay.
I felt like we kind of just went over very quickly, right? I wasn't a fan of the puzzles.
Really?
Right. So I think
all of them, or just a certain type? Because there's like a kind of a handful of puzzle archetypes, for lack of a better term.
I really disliked. Oh, no, not really dislike. That's a bit unfair. Like at the start of the game, I enjoyed. You know how you have to like match the symbols, right?
Yeah, with like the environment.
You have the environment. At the start of the game, I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you have to like, as soon as you can't find it on the first like scan, I feel like it just takes away from like the whole gravity of the situation. Whenever now I'm just like, wait a minute, let me just climb up this ladder,
pacing around this area looking for a shape.
And I know, like, because there was one moment where I was just like, Alex, do you remember where the fuck this thing is? Right? I think Amy actually saw it beside me, but I thought she was pointing at something else on the screen. But I was just like, I don't fuck.
Some of them are a bit obscure.
But I feel like it's never, for me anyway, it was never a case of like shit. Like, I usually find the area where the symbols were kind of like on edges of the screen.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just kind of scanned around, and it was usually pretty obvious what it was trying to point me towards. And after that, it was just a case of, alright, I need to position this in a certain way to get the actual shape to appear.
Well, I felt like in a lot of situations as well, like, I accidentally just kind of panned my camera.
Yeah.
And was like, oh, wait, shit. Oh, okay, I guess I got it.
There was one instance where the voices pointed me towards one, but I don't think it happened for the rest of the game. And it was like one of the first ones.
So I have a beef of the voices, right, in this one bit, right? So the bit where I had to like stop and ask Alec, it was because they just kept repeating the same fucking dialogue, and all they kept saying was, "Did you know that Dylan loved you?" And I don't fucking care. I don't love him right now, right? Fuck up, right? I can't find these two beams of light to match on this crate. Like, I was so mad at that one.
Oh,
bit.
is this the one in one of the shards? I feel like you mentioning that.
Yeah.
Like, it's the tower one, and then like half of the light's hitting the wall and half of it's hitting the crates. Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
It's something like that, but
it's the one with the masks.
Yeah.
But
I really like those ones though, where you're like kind of going between different versions of the environment.
Yeah, I think those are grand because it mixes it up, right?
Yeah.
I loved those trials.
I liked all but one of them, and that's because suddenly it's the one I'm at the minute is kind of annoying me because it suddenly made the game a stealth game, and it's a bit annoying. But the one I didn't like was the maze, and you're kind of being chased by the fire.
Oh yeah.
Just because it kind of, the entire game, like, it never really puts pressure on you. Like, you're never really at a time constraint, and now that they've suddenly done it, it makes the game kind of feel a lot more clunkier than it probably does ordinarily.
That was where I missed my lore stone.
Which trial? Sorry.
So you're like the swamp one, I think, is it? No. There's one of them where like...
Oh, you're talking about like the labyrinth thing?
You're in like a...
You go in and you
house.
light the torches?
No. The one where you're in a house and like then you like the fire starts coming towards you and you have to...
the indoor one?
Yeah, and then you have to find the symbols in the maze while trying to avoid the fire.
That one wasn't too bad.
Speaking of fire, right? At the start of the game, whenever you're going to CERT,
Yes.
there is... Do you know how like the whole... story bit of that is like, oh, you find the object, and you have to run from the flames to the door, right? So because I was like, oh yeah, this game's quite nice looking, right? Let me just stop and admire things. I didn't realize you just straight up die, right? Because I was, oh yeah, look at all these fire, and I'm just like, let me just like take a second just to look around, and then I just died. And I was like, oh, well, we're not going to look at the game anymore, so keep running.
The fact she wasn't coughing and spluttering didn't give that away at all, no.
It's
all
funny.
in her head, man. Like, come on.
It's funny you've mentioned dying.
Yep.
Unless anyone has any more else to say about the gameplay. So, permadeath. Let's talk about it.
Love me games with permadeath.
Of it.
Yes, exactly. So, I don't know if you are all aware that obviously they mentioned the permadeath at the start, and because there's a bit in the game where you have to die, and then they mentioned like, oh yes, Senua has this rot, and every time you die, this rot will start creeping up her arm, and if it gets to your head, the game's going to delete your progress. That doesn't actually happen, regardless of how hard you try. Did IO Hans, did you know this?
What? Sorry.
Jesus Christ, Hans, fucking pay attention.
What, the fact that there's actually no permadeath?
Yeah, the permadeath is actually completely false.
Yeah.
See, I
guess that from the fact that it goes up your arm whenever the narrative forces you to die. I was like, well, that's hardly fair, is it?
No, even if you die ordinarily, like, it will go up your arm.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. The fact, like, I assumed it would go up your arm whenever you die from gameplay.
Oh, you
but
do?
The fact the rot was, but the fact that the rot was going up my arm when it was narrative deaths, things that I couldn't avoid, I was like, well, that doesn't really seem fair, does it? So,
but then it also every time you hit a checkpoint, it goes back down.
Wait, does it? What? I didn't know that bit.
Every time you hit a checkpoint, it lowers the rot a bit.
But no, the narrative thing kind of gave it away a bit, because I was like, because technically you're then lowering the number of times I can die when I've done nothing wrong. Do you know what I mean?
But I also feel like the fact it resets slightly at checkpoints completely nullifies it, because anytime there is a story beat, there's usually a checkpoint directly after it.
I didn't realize about that bit.
Oh yeah, it totally does. Because I remember reading about this when the game first came out quite a lot, and like I think it was Eurogamer did a bunch of like, they purposely tried to fucking do it, and like apparently they tried killing themselves like hundreds of times in the same section, and the rot I don't think would ever go above like her shoulder or so. So the developers have since come out and said, yes, we did purposely lie, because then we wanted players to start feeling some form of anxiety, similar to how people can suffer from mental illness with anxiety. And it got me thinking, like, can anyone think of any other examples in games where the gameplay purposely lies to you or tries to deceive you? Because I can think of plenty of games where the story is obviously, like, there's a bait and switch or something like in the story.
It's a lie.
Yeah, or the big one I'm thinking of, Spec Ops: The Line, where, like, the whole game is played out is, like, as if you are the good guy, and then suddenly, at the end, there's a twist and it makes you realize, oh no, we've been murdering innocents this whole time, and stuff like that. And even stuff like Gone Home, where like the whole game is presented like it's a horror game, and the entire time, even when I was playing it, I remember thinking, alright, when's the twist going to happen? When's it suddenly going to become a horror game and I'm going to be trapped in this house with something? But I can never think of a time where the actual mechanics were technically a lie, and I think it could lead to some interesting things in games if done correctly.
I can't think of another game.
The only problem with that is, like, people will test it and find out that it is a lie. So then it becomes known and kind of defeats the purpose.
Well, to be fair, though, I didn't know about it at all.
Yeah, like, to be fair with this one, we went, like, well, myself and I went in blind. And it was only after the fact that we found out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm a bit disappointed with, though? I wish they kind of hid it a bit more. Because I from the very start, I thought that, because at the start of the game, obviously we didn't know, like you hadn't played the game for very long to know what the game was like. So whenever it appears with just like a text box that says, "Oh yeah, by the way, permadeath," that's really like out of character.
Yes, you know what I thought was weird about it? It's I think the only time I could think of that the game just puts text on the screen and just says, "Right, here's a gameplay mechanic." Because every other time it's usually like Druth or the other voice, like the voice that's not Senua in her head, or the narrator or whatever it is talking to you. Like, not a lot of the time is just, alright, here's essentially a tooltip on the screen.
Like, you can see why they did it though, right? Because it's in your face, and you're just like, oh shit, if I read this, and then you see it. But it's a bit of a shame, like, they didn't actually, like, sort of that was a bit too direct. Also, the bit which sort of like proper, like, 'cause that bit I kind of just let it go because it was the start of the game. I didn't really know how the game was portrayed.
Yeah.
But later on, I remember saying it was either to you or Alex. I was like, it's a bit funny that the arm thing doesn't happen if you die in a boss fight.
Yeah, it happens when you die anywhere else, but like in a boss fight, it doesn't happen.
Which seems kind of odd. And I was like, oh, that's very kind of them to do that. But like, to be fair, it did it did work on me, right? I did feel like whenever I died, which I did die, I actually died quite a few times actually in the game. I was like, oh shit, is this the time? And then whenever I died, like enough that like it kind of saw like the same kind of arm level happen. I was like, wait a sec.
See, it worked on me because I didn't die a lot.
Oh, all right, Mr. Pro Gamer here.
I died maybe 3 times outside of boss fights. So I had that wee nagging worry. I was like, is this actually going to delete my save? So in all the combat, I was so safe. In the last section, where you have to go down and you have to die, I spent a good 15 minutes fighting because I refused to go down. Like, I was so careful in combat.
The only similar thing I can kind of think of, bar like roguelikes obviously, where it's kind of a given, is stuff like that is Steel Battalion on the original Xbox that came with like an actual like fucking mech console for you to play on. And when your mech got destroyed, if you didn't eject fast enough, like with an actual eject button that had like a wee plastic lid and all you had to flip up, if you didn't eject fast enough before your mech exploded, you lost your progress and you had to start again.
That sounds amazing and dumb at the same time.
And I know like Kojima like has always like mentions, I'd love to put some form of like permadeath mechanic in the game. But I think it's interesting to see permadeath in a game that isn't something like a roguelike. But I feel like it's obviously going to be very hard just to pull it off in something. It's not a roguelike where like you could lose literally like tens of hours of progress.
I don't think it makes any sense in a story-based game.
Yeah.
Because to force someone to play a story section multiple times ruins the story because they'll get bored of it.
Yeah.
I guess the better question to ask like in terms of this kind of thing is like, what other kind of elements could you have like lied about that's not, death, right? Like it could be something like really like hilarious where it's like at the start of the game you were taught how to like block or something, but it's like, oh yeah, your character's actually invincible. This is entire you've just been pressing this button for no reason, or like something like that, right?
The one I think, well, the only one the one popped in my head there, Fez came out, and it was once you beat like the main bit of it once, like you collected all the golden cubes, you got the idea of like, all right, now you can collect these anti-cubes. And they taught you this mechanic that was like, all right, if you double jump and hold up, you'll just start flying. And it turned out that you could actually do that the entire game. It just was never surfaced to the player until you'd complete the game once. But even if you just start the game up, put it for the first time and double jump and hit up, I think it works, and you can just fly the entire time. I think stuff like that's kind of cool.
I hope that's actually just we forgot to untick that checkbox.
would that count as like lying by omission then?
Like, kind of. Like that's what I'm kind of thinking. Like, it's not necessarily lying. It's just we're not going to tell you until a certain point. But I think it's an interesting concept. And I think there is probably something very cool. Probably just you could do with it. It'd probably just take a smarter man than me to think of it.
All those creative types could probably work with it.
Any last thoughts before we wrap this up? No.
Well, I guess the one thing for sure we touched on is that, like, this game, and I feel like this is one of the few games where it's like, because it is a video game, in terms of like as a form of media to talk about mental illness, it is because it is a video game that it does it so well. Because if you were to watch someone or watch something on TV to sort of tell you about mental illness or like follow someone going through it, it doesn't really do any, like, it's sort of just me listening, but as someone who is trying to embody this character, and obviously if you have headphones on and stuff, right, like, and like physically experiencing something, no matter how like sort of metaphorical I guess it is for us, I think this is a really great example of a game that uses itself as being a game really well.
I assume you didn't wear headphones because you were playing it with Amy.
Correct. I guess the only thing to say about that is that if you play on the Switch and it is in console mode, it's handheld mode. Sorry.
Yeah, there's no easy way to kind of have headphones.
No. It actually tries to play the voices from only one side, and on the other side,
Fair enough.
It does try.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same. Actually, it was just kind of off-putting, but yeah, it does try.
Personally, for me, I really, really fucking like this game. I think, as I mentioned before, it's funny we played this like kind of beside Gree, where Gree was completely down the middle for me, where this feels like it has these really fucking high points, and then this kind of one low point for me, like really low point in the combat. But I think the rest of the high points even it out really well, and I think there's enough there besides the combat to kind of push through it and get past it, especially if you just want to put it easy and blow through it as fast as you can, like I did. And I'm really excited to play the rest of the game, and I think it's an insanely well-made game, and I can easily see why after this game, like Microsoft wanted to pick up a company like Ninja Theory, and I'm excited to see where they go next. Hans?
I think the story is absolutely fantastic. Graphically, it's stunning. Yes, the combat's probably its biggest letdown, but if you can see past the mediocre combat, it's worth a visit, and it's only like 25 quid, so why not?
Alex?
Pretty much the same as I've been saying throughout this. Really enjoyed it. Would recommend watching the featurette. It goes a bit more in depth about their reasoning behind certain parts of it. And of course, listen to that soundtrack. It's amazing.
And Awa.
Highly recommend this game, as I just really enjoy games that actually talk about, touchy subjects, right? And it talks about it not in a
like
kind
racism.
of damn them Celts. But yeah, and it talks about it in like a very serious, like heartfelt way, and not just like a cheap joke or like as a publicity or marketing kind of thing. Like it is.
No.
It takes itself very seriously. And yeah, I hope that more games will talk about like issues like this.
Very positive opinions all around from the Bash Bros. But before we wrap it up for May, Alex, let us in on what we play in next month. Please pick a good game for once.
I see two. No, we're going to space, guys.
Oh, No Man's Sky!
No. We're playing Rebel Galaxy.
I own this on something. And it may have been the Xbox I sold.
Swashbuckling space adventure.
Very positive, just like Icy was.
God damn it. Sweet. Looking forward to it. I feel like they announced a sequel to that very recently.
They did.
Yes. I knew they did. See? I'm a genius. But yes, join us next month where we'll be playing Rebel Galaxy. But for now, it is a goodbye from Hans.
Have a good one.
A goodbye from Alex.
Bye.
A goodbye from IY.
It's all in your head.
And a farewell from myself. See you next time.